compassion, and human rights. Policies that make sense. SSDP is proud to serve as the lead convener of the Cannabis Unity Coalition, the largest ever bipartisan coalition of cannabis advocates from the political left, right, and industry coming together in support of 3 goals: fully legalize and fully decriminalize cannabis, release all cannabis prisoners, and clear their records and restore their rights completely.
Yeah.
Right. Today, the Cannabis Unity Coalition stands before you as 44 organizations behind 13 federal pathways to cannabis reform. 44 organizations, 3 goals, 13 bills, 1,683 letters and counting sent by our members to their congressional representatives in support of those goals, and 1 message to Congress. The time for cannabis reform is now. The numbers tell the story. Today, nearly 90% of Americans, people on both sides of the aisle, support marijuana legalization. 24 states have legalized adult use cannabis, and the vast majority of Americans now live in a state with some form of legal access. The U.S. legal cannabis market generated approximately $33.8 billion in revenue last year in 2025, and 52 million people in the U.S. identify as cannabis consumers.
Wow.
And yet, almost 200,000 Americans were arrested last year for cannabis. Over 90% of those were for simple possession. Close to 3,000 Americans remain behind bars at the federal level for cannabis charges, and tens of thousands more are locked up at the state and local level. This coalition brings together students, veterans, directly impacted individuals, civil rights advocates, criminal justice reformers, researchers, public defenders, industry leaders, indigenous advocates, and grassroots organizers from around the country. Many of our organizations approach this issue from different perspectives, but we are united by a shared belief: the cannabis prohibition has failed, and that continuing the status quo causes real harm to real people every single day. We are here because rescheduling is progress, but it is not legalization. It will not deliver the promises that President Trump, former President Biden, and the American people hope to see. Cannabis is still not federally legal. Our families and communities are still paying the price of prohibition, and Congress must act. Fully decriminalize cannabis, deschedule, remove it from the Controlled Substances Act, and start the process of healing the harms caused by over a century of prohibition. And with that, I am so honored to welcome Congressman Ilhan Omar to speak with us today. She stood up here with the Cannabis Unity Coalition at every single Cannabis Week of Unity. Rep. Omar is one of Congress's most committed champions of cannabis reform, and she currently serves as co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, where she's pledged to be louder than her predecessors and to build bipartisan consensus.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Kat, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I am grateful to be joined by my co-chair of the Cannabis Caucus, Congresswoman Titus, and my colleague, Congressman Cohen. I also want to thank all of the incredible fighters standing with us to fight to legalize cannabis nationwide. Let me start out by saying the United States is long overdue for a rational, just, and humane cannabis policy. For decades, we have spent billions of dollars enforcing a war on drugs that has failed and has devastated communities, ruined lives, and disproportionately targeted Black, brown, and low-income Americans. But now, millions of people across this country agree that cannabis should be legal. People understand that the old approach has failed. They understand that adults should not carry criminal records for possessing cannabis. They understand that we should be investing in education and economic opportunity, not mass incarceration. It is about damn time Congress caught up with where the American people are.
Yes.
But legalization alone is not enough. If we legalize cannabis and simply allow large corporations to make huge profits while the very communities destroyed by the war on drugs are left behind, then we have failed.
Yes.
Cannabis reform must be about justice and repair. That means expunging the records of people arrested for non-violent cannabis offenses.
Right.
It means reinvesting in communities that were targeted for decades by discriminatory policies. And it means ensuring working class people, small businesses, and entrepreneurs have a real opportunity in participating in this new economy.
Right.
As co-chair of the Cannabis Caucus, one of my top priority is making sure economic justice remains at the center of this movement. Right now, we have completely unjust and ridiculous system in America where most states have now legalized cannabis for medical and recreational use, but federal law has continued to lag behind. That contradiction makes no sense. It hurts consumers, it hurts workers, and it hurts small businesses. And it only creates more chaos and inequity across this country. So let me be clear about what cannabis reforms are needed immediately. We must fully deschedule cannabis now.
Yeah.
We must stop the federal hemp ban.
Yeah.
We must fix the outrageous barriers facing legal cannabis businesses that cannot access banking services. And we must ensure that the millions of Americans living in legal cannabis states, from our veterans who use medical marijuana to deal with pain and PTSD, to our public housing residents who are threatened with eviction for using legal product, can finally do that without fear of federal punishment or government overreach.
Right.
States like Minnesota are already showing what careful regulation and legislation can create jobs, generate revenue, support local economies, and improve public safety outcomes. States are leading the way, and the federal government should be learning from their success, not standing in the way. We have the chance not to only end a failed and destructive policy, but to build something better. A cannabis system rooted in fairness and economic opportunity for all, not just for the wealthy and well-connected. That's what this work is about, and I am excited to get it done with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I hand it back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Omar. Throughout his time in Congress, Congressman Stephen Cohen has been a consistent voice for cannabis policy reform, raising concerns about the harms of prohibition, the barriers it creates to scientific research, and the disproportionate impact it has on marginalized communities. That leadership was made especially clear right here on 420, a day widely associated with cannabis culture, when the congressman stood right up here with SSDP in the pouring rain and listened to the stories told by men who received life sentences for nonviolent cannabis charges and lost decades of their lives before receiving clemency from President Trump. Congressman, thank you so much for your leadership.
Didn't just see him.
Is he?
He's chilling. He wanted to make a diva entrance.
Hey. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you. It's my first press conference since I've become a lame duck.
Outrageous.
Outrageous. It is outrageous. But they did it. We've been working on marijuana decriminalization since I was the police legal advisor in Memphis in 1976. Had some progress, but it's a slow progress. The administration here says they want to help it, but it's a matter of the drug policy folks getting in line with the DEA and the Justice Department to get it done. It's hard to get the DEA to get something done. My history and experience has been that the DEA is the Strait of Hormuz for marijuana legislation. You have to go through it, but you can't do it. In America, every 40 seconds, and that's probably as much time as I've been here, up here, somebody's been arrested for a drug offense. Over 85% of those for possession alone. African Americans are 3.6 more likely to be arrested than Caucasians, though the use is estimated to be about the same. The Gallup poll says 64 to 70% of Americans favor making marijuana legal, and it's legal right now in 24 states and in D.C. I was on an airplane one time, a long time back. I was a state senator traveling from Nashville to Memphis. And a fellow turned around to me and he says, I'm a Republican. There's a lot that you do that I don't agree with. But I do agree with you on marijuana and pets. That's what the Democrats need to do to get the Republicans to switch over, I guess. This all started with Harry Anslinger a long time ago, and it followed through for years. There's never really been a logical path on why marijuana is illegal, except for politics. It's kind of like the war in Iran. Nixon's team that studied it said decriminalize it.
Right.
Yep. They didn't do it because it was good for Nixon politically. So a lot of people went to jail. A lot of people away from their families, lost SNAP payments and other housing opportunities because of marijuana convictions. Also, Richard Nixon could continue to beat up on people that were different than him and others who did not support him, hippies and brown people and black people. Mm-hmm. We had some progress with Joe Biden, but the DEA, after promising they'd do something about it, did nothing. And now we're with Trump, and I don't know what the status is because you can't believe anything he says. It's good all these people are here and continuing the pressure on public officials by showing the support that marijuana decriminalization and legalization have. People should not have gone to jail over the last, it's almost, I guess it's been 94 years since Harry Anslinger kind of came on the scene. And we need to end that. We need to give people freedom, study marijuana, see if it can relieve pain, if it can help people with PSD, and other problems. Maybe they should give it to the Tennessee General Assembly and they can come up with a reasonable redistricting plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman, for your continued leadership and fighting for the people still locked up for cannabis. The mic is off? Okay. The Cannabis Unity Coalition would not exist if not for the hard work of Jason Ortiz, who not only first introduced the idea of bringing together the political left, right, and the cannabis industry together in support of cannabis justice, but also took on the hefty role of lead convener in 2024 and 2025. Jason is the director of strategic initiatives for the Last Prisoner Project, an organization dedicated to freeing those still incarcerated for cannabis offenses and helping impacted individuals rebuild their lives. Jason.
Yeah, thank you. If you're ready to tell Congress it's time to legalize weed, let me get a hell yeah! If you're ready to get everybody out of prison who's in for cannabis, let me get a hell yeah! Hell yeah, because that's the type of energy we're going to need to actually get this job done. My name is Jason Ortiz. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Last Prisoner Project and the Vice President of the newly formed Latino Cannabis Alliance. Right. And I'm here to remind folks that while there has been progress, we have not seen justice for the nearly 3,000 people who are currently incarcerated for cannabis crimes. There are nearly 30 to 40,000 people sitting in cages in state prisons across the country, while cannabis businesses generate tax revenue and political donations for the folks that are working in that building, refusing to move forward on what we actually want to see, which is real legalization, freeing all of the cannabis prisoners, and erasing all of the records so everyone who was impacted by cannabis prohibition can rejoin their families, become full members of society, and join this beautiful movement to finally end the war on cannabis users once and for all. And so as somebody who was arrested as a teenager and got thrown out of school and had my life ruined, but luckily was not incarcerated thanks to the work of advocates that came before me, the impact of policy change can have incredible positive impacts on people across the country. And so that's why today we are joined here by so many amazing advocates, folks like Kat Murthy of SSDP, who is one of the most amazing executive directors SSDP has ever seen, and keeping the fight going for all of the different people who have been impacted, youth, folks that are working in the industry, people that work in the legal space, folks that have been impacted by prohibition in countless ways. And that's why we are here as a representation of the nearly 70% of Americans who want to see cannabis reform, so that we can have a voice for every angle possible to tell the folks in that building that Americans, folks that are going to vote for them, folks that are going to support or decide if they're not coming back to Congress, want to make sure that cannabis legalization is an issue in this midterm until we get the job done.
That's right.
And so we're here today to speak for all of the folks that cannot speak for themselves because they're in jail for the same thing that many of us do on a daily basis and most dispensaries and cultivators do on a weekly basis. There are people that are currently serving life sentences for nonviolent cannabis offenses. Life sentences. Folks like Ismail Lira, life sentence for cannabis. Can you imagine sitting in a jail cell watching dispensaries and cultivation facilities pop up around you, and yet people in Congress refuse to even decriminalize the plant? This has been madness for 100 years, and it is well past time that Congress act, and we need to make sure that we pass comprehensive legislation like the MORE Act that would actually release cannabis prisoners, would create institutional reinvestment in our communities, and finally end this nightmare once and for all. But we won't make it happen unless all the folks here are joined by all of the folks at home, pressuring Congress, meeting with them in their offices, meeting with them in their fundraisers, and letting them know that this year, in 2026, cannabis legalization will be a determining factor in these elections, and you will not be elected unless you do the right thing and finally end cannabis prohibition once and for all. Yeah. So thank you to the Cannabis Unity Coalition. Thank you to Kat Murthy for an incredible job organizing this week. Thank you to Jess and Ish, my LCA board members, for being here in support. And we look forward to seeing you all in the halls of Congress here in a minute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason, for getting us all riled up. Since its founding in 1970, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, has provided a voice in the public policy debate for the tens of millions of Americans who use marijuana responsibly, steadfastly opposing marijuana prohibition, and fighting tirelessly to end arrests. It's my pleasure to introduce NORML's political director, Morgan Fox.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody behind me. We've been working at this for far too long. As you said, NORML has been doing this for over half a century, and over the last 2 decades, because of the tireless effort of all of you and activists around the country, we've made a lot of progress at the state level. Unfortunately, during that time, federal progress has been relatively stagnant, and what little progress we have made has come at great cost. That has finally started to change. Unfortunately, it's happening at a time when the forces of the drug war are starting to come back into vogue again. Misinformation, stigmatization, violence, hatred, all based around consumption of a plant and the people that enjoy using it. We cannot let this stand, and we cannot afford to let the people behind us allow that narrative to take shape and form the policies that are going to shape cannabis policy reform for the next couple of decades, if not the next century. So it is incumbent upon all of us to remind everybody, both at the state level, but especially at the federal level, that this is first and foremost an issue of justice. We cannot lose that focus, and that's why we're all here today. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and let's go get them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Morgan. Founded in 2010, the National Cannabis Industry Organization is the oldest, largest, and most effective trade association serving the cannabis industry. Please welcome NCIA Board Chair, Adam Rosenberg.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the National Cannabis Industry Association. The NCIA represents the businesses and professionals shaping a responsible cannabis industry that creates jobs, pays taxes, and supports local economies. But this industry is about much more than just economic opportunity. As a part of the broader cannabis movement, our industry provides a vehicle for safe access and repairing the damage caused by decades of senseless prohibition.
Yes.
Many of us have witnessed how this plant can save lives. We have seen patients, veterans, and families find relief through safe, regulated access to cannabis. We have also seen how prohibition destroys lives. People have been imprisoned and families have been separated. Entire communities have been devastated by laws that never should have existed. Although the vast majority of states now regulate cannabis in some form, outdated federal policy continues to punish lawful businesses and strip Americans of their civil liberties.
Right.
It is a privilege to stand here today with the leaders who are working to replace these inhumane laws with policy grounded in public health, safety, and fairness. Through education and persistence, we will succeed in ensuring our federal lawmakers listen to the will of the American people and end the unjust criminalization of a plant that has served humanity for thousands of years. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much, Adam and NCIA, for standing up for the consumers that their industry supports. Since 1991, Families Against Mandatory Minimums has been fighting to end unjust sentencing and prison policies. Please welcome FAM's Director of Federal Legislative Affairs, Kevin Hagan.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you to SSDP for inviting FAM to join today's press conference and for continuing to elevate the voices of directly impacted individuals and families. This year marks the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, and for FAM, it marks our 35th. From the halls of Congress to state legislatures across the country, FAM has worked with lawmakers from both sides of the aisle to ensure that our nation's core values are reflected and honored in our criminal justice system. Unfortunately, true democracy is still out of reach for incarcerated Americans. But like FAM, the story of America is one of progress and reform. Though we are shaped by our past, it is up to us to build a future that not only preserves liberty, but expands it.
Yes.
When someone goes to prison, their family serves that sentence with them, emotionally, financially, and across generations. We have seen these consequences firsthand in marijuana-related cases. People have received life sentences for an offense that today in much of the country has been legalized or commercialized. Individuals who pose no threat to public safety lost years of their lives to policies rooted in fear and bigotry over evidence and fairness. Sentencing policies that create unjust, arbitrary, or racially biased outcomes only weakens trust in our democracy. Evidence-based sentencing reform, however, strengthens communities, saves taxpayer dollars, and restores trust in the legal system. So the work must go on.
That's right.
As America approaches its 250th anniversary, we must not only reflect on our founding ideals, but the responsibility we all share to live up to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Director of Drug Markets and Legal Regulation at Drug Policy Alliance, Kat Packer is the leading expert on cannabis law and policy who envisions cannabis policy reform as both an opportunity and a responsibility to promote harm reduction and advance equity and social justice. Kat?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Drug Policy Alliance is proud to stand along the Cannabis Unity Coalition today in calling for full decriminalization and descheduling of cannabis at the federal level.
That's right.
For more than a decade, a majority of Americans have supported ending federal marijuana prohibition. The public understands what policymakers in Washington must finally acknowledge. Marijuana should have never been placed in Schedule I to begin with.
That's right.
As former Nixon advisor later admitted, the war on drugs was never about drugs.
That's right.
It was used to target Black and brown communities and political opponents, as has been acknowledged by our congressional members this morning. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Of course we did. For decades, marijuana prohibition has fueled arrests, incarceration, surveillance, and the denial of opportunity, disproportionately harming Black and brown communities. This is why rescheduling alone is not enough. And let's be clear, marijuana is only partially rescheduled.
Yes, that's right.
We need full decriminalization and descheduling.
Yes.
We need expungement of records, restoration of rights, and policies grounded in science, evidence, public health, and equity. At the Drug Policy Alliance, we are committed to replacing prohibition with fair and just regulation that repairs harms and creates opportunities for the communities most impacted by criminalization. It's long past time for Congress and leaders in Washington to end this failed policy and finally deliver liberty and justice for all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kat, for your appeal to liberty and justice. As counsel to the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, Eric Sterling helped write and pass many of the laws that form the legal backbone of the war on drugs before dedicating his life to undoing the damage that they have caused. Today, he speaks on behalf of Law Enforcement Action Partnership, bringing the perspective of current and former law enforcement leaders who support ending prohibition and the war on drugs. Eric.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to stand here with all of these leaders of this reform movement. The Law Enforcement Action Partnership is an international organization of law enforcement and criminal justice professionals, police, correctional officers, prosecutors, judges, and so forth. LEAP mobilizes the voice of law enforcement in support of drug policy and criminal justice reforms that will make communities safer by focusing law enforcement resources on the greatest threats to public safety. The Law Enforcement Action Partnership understands from experience that legalization of cannabis paired with strong regulation is the most effective way to protect public health and public safety. As Kat said, from 1979 to 1989, I was assistant counsel to the House Crime Subcommittee. In 1986, I helped write the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which created mandatory minimum sentences for cannabis cultivation and distribution. If the quantities alleged in the offenses exceeded 1,000 kilograms, 1 metric ton, a sentence of life imprisonment without parole could be imposed. Those sentences were adopted with the minimum amount of consideration, 0 consideration. No hearings were held on this. No input was had from the public. No hearings were heard at no input from the Department of Justice, from the federal judges, from the states. Last year in my home state of Maryland, 1,000 kilograms of cannabis flower were sold legally every 2 weeks. These unjust penalties are still on the books, and they will not be removed by moving cannabis to Schedule 3. Every person still incarcerated for a cannabis offense is the victim of grievous injustice, as are the millions who face lasting consequences due to cannabis offenses. Today, I am proud to represent law enforcement's call to Congress to legalize cannabis. Most of the problems associated with cannabis stem from its illegality, now led primarily by the federal government. State legalization has demonstrated that regulation is far more effective than prohibition at reducing the harms of cannabis use and supporting public safety. Under prohibition, cannabis was sold through an unregulated, illicit market with no age verification, no product testing, no labeling requirements, and no meaningful consumer protections. In state after state, legalization and regulation have replaced the chaos of prohibition, freeing up law enforcement to focus on serious crime instead of low-level cannabis offenses. Continued federal illegality leads to more cartel involvement. Federal illegality leads to violence in the remaining illegal market. Federal illegality leads to youth access in the illegal market. Federal illegality leads to potentially unsafe products in the illegal market, as well as money laundering, tax evasion, political and police corruption. Federal illegality handicaps the legal cannabis industry in the majority of states, and federal illegality blocks legitimate interstate commerce, and it profoundly handicaps research into the medical benefits of Congress. If Congress were to pass a cannabis legalization bill this year, wouldn't President Trump sign it? Of course he would. Then why wait any longer? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric Sterling, and to the law enforcement officers who are standing up and saying that the war on drugs is wrong and people should not be getting arrested for cannabis. At just 18 years old, Deshaun Durham was given an 8-year prison sentence for 2 pounds of cannabis, far less than most legal dispensaries sell in a day. Today, he joins us from Forgotten Prisoner, advocating for people still locked up for marijuana, many times less than a mile from a legal cannabis dispensary. Deshaun?
Thank you. I'm glad I can be here again with y'all this year. And today I'm with the Forgotten Prisoner organization, and we're advocating for the release of Jared Shaw. He's an American citizen, a Dallas, Texas native. He was a professional basketball player, and he went to Indonesia to play basketball and was self-treating his Crohn's disease with cannabis gummies. They were going to execute him, and we were able to stop the execution, but he still has years left to do in an Indonesian prison. And it's a lot different than American prisons because his family can't just go over the ocean and visit him every weekend like many of these guys can. You know, he can't create friendships within the prison system in Indonesia because no one speaks his language, and the diet is vastly different from an American diet seen here in American prisons. And so he's pretty much dying in there. And I'm here advocating for the release, just like we did for Brittany Griner, and bring him back to the United States. You know, this administration always wants to talk about America first. Well, let's bring this American citizen home and let's get it done. And I just want to let everyone know there's nowhere in the world that the Forgotten Prisoner won't go to free our cannabis prisoners. Thank you.
Thank you, Deshaun, for reminding us that there are people around the world suffering because of the U.S. policies on drug laws that we've moved everywhere else. Bring every last prisoner home. And here to continue that conversation is Bill Levers, CEO of Freedom Grow. Freedom Grow brings light to dark cells across the nation by providing nonviolent cannabis prisoners with commissary money, prison outreach, and public education. We're so glad to have you here with us.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and being here today. My name is Bill Levers, and I stand above you proudly as the CEO of Freedom Grow. We're an organization that is dedicated to supporting the families of nonviolent cannabis prisoners and fighting for justice reform. Let's be honest about where we are right now. Rescheduling cannabis is not justice reform. Moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 may create business opportunities for some, but it does absolutely nothing for those thousands of people whose lives have already been destroyed by the war on drugs. A man or woman sitting in prison today for a nonviolent cannabis offense does not get freedom because licensed medical operators got tax relief. Families separated by outdated cannabis laws do not get reunified because politicians decided to shuffle some paperwork. What this movement needs is descheduling, full removal of cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act, because cannabis should have never been criminalized in the first place. Descheduling is the pathway to meaningful reform. It creates a legal and moral framework necessary to address expungements, resentencing, and the release of nonviolent cannabis prisoners who are still paying the price for a plan who are still paying for a plant generating billions of dollars today. We cannot continue building a legal framework on top of forgotten prisoners left behind by prohibition. If this industry wants legitimacy, it must also demand accountability. Justice is not selective. Freedom cannot be conditional. At Freedom Grow, we believe cannabis reform without prisoner release is incomplete reform, period. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is. Let everyone home. Next, we'll hear from Deshita Dawson of Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition, a leader advancing equity and inclusive cannabis regulation. Deshita.
Good morning. I said good morning. Good morning. Second half of this. So my name is Dashida Dawson, and I'm a founding member and board chair of the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition, a national nonprofit organization of regulators across the United States, also known as the leading cannabis equity reform leaders in the United States. I'm also the former lead cannabis regulator for both Portland, Oregon, and New York City. Now, for years, CRCC has said deschedule or do nothing. And we said that because we understood then what we do now is that incremental reform alone does not fully address the injustice and ongoing harms of prohibition.
That's right.
Let's be clear. The federal rescheduling order only partially acknowledges the medicinal value of cannabis. That's right. Under this framework, cannabis is considered medical if it exists within certain federally recognized or state licensed systems, even when it is fundamentally the same plant and often the same product available in adult use markets. And that matters because the CRCC members are the people who actually oversee these systems across the United States. And we understand the science, we understand the policy, the enforcement challenges, and the real world consequences of confusion created by incomplete reform. Rescheduling is not descheduling, it is still prohibition, just rebranded.
That's right.
And when laws are unclear, unevenly applied, or built with loopholes, the burden is almost always carried by the same communities that have already borne the brunt of the harms of criminalization for generations. This movement was never supposed to be about creating a safer legal pathway for a select few while everyone else remains vulnerable to enforcement, exclusion, and misinformation. It was supposed to be about ending the criminalization of people over the plant the government itself now acknowledges medicinal. CRCC is prepared to help shape the realities of federal reform with the expertise regulators have built across the country because we have to. But our position remains the same. The goal must be full descheduling, equity, accountability, and justice.
That's right.
Amen. Thank you, Dashida. 70% of people sentenced federally for cannabis possession are Hispanic or Latino. Jessica Gonzalez, president of the Latino Cannabis Alliance, says this is not a coincidence, but a feature of our current system. Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Can I get a buenos dias?
Buenos dias!
All right. Buenos dias. My name is Jessica Gonzalez. I am an Ecuadorian immigrant, an attorney and the president of the Latino Cannabis Alliance, a national coalition of Latino advocates, attorneys, organizers, researchers, and storytellers fighting to move our communities from the margins of cannabis policy to the center of it. We are Harry Anslinger's worst nightmare.
Yeah!
We are here because Latinos are the biggest immigrant group in the country, and the cannabis industry benefits tremendously from Latino consumers and workers while staying incredibly silent on the same policies that make participation for non-citizen Latinos dangerous. That is a contradiction we're here to say out loud. And here is a number we don't hear often, 70%. Over 70% of people sentenced federally for cannabis possession are classified as Hispanic. That is not a coincidence, but it is a result of a system that has fused cannabis prohibition and immigration into a deportation pipeline and aimed it at our families. But we have never been a people who accept the terms we are given. My family refused when they left everything they knew and built a life in a foreign country. Our communities refused when prohibition tried to turn our families into criminals and our neighborhoods into evidence. And today, the Latino Cannabis Alliance refuses to let one more family be deported, one more worker be silenced, or one more community erased from a movement we have always belonged to. So today is not just about what has been done to us. Today is about what we refuse to let be undone. Our work spans borders, but it begins where this system was built, here in the United States. Prohibition began with a lie about our people. It will end with the truth from us. Yes. So, as much as they hate it, seguimos aquí. We're still here. Muchísimas gracias.
Yeah!
Thank you so much, Jessica and the Latino Cannabis Alliance. Congresswoman Dina Titus has been one of the most active federal voices for cannabis reform in Congress. Last year, she actually introduced the Evidence-Based Drug Policy Act, one of the 13 pathways to reform we'll be educating her colleagues on today, right here, standing next to the Cannabis Unity Coalition. A longtime advocate for reforming the nation's marijuana laws, Rep. Titus currently serves as co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. Good to see you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. And thank all of you for being here. You come from all over the country as part of this.
Closer to the microphone.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can just climb into it.
Sorry.
Anyway, I was just saying thank you all for being here and part of this important coalition and from coming all over the country to bring your message to the Hill. It's always impressive when you're here in person, look somebody in the eye and make your argument. So it's great to have you here. You know, we've been working on this for a while, me at the state legislature, y'all in different places around the country, and now with the Cannabis Caucus, and we're making some progress. I think we can actually be proud that some things are happening. Seems slow if you're on the front lines, but at least it's moving in the right direction. States have been way ahead of the federal government the whole time, and what we're trying to do here now is bring the federal government up to the level of the states, because dragging behind is just not realistic and just doesn't make any sense morally, ethically, legally, health-wise, you name it. So I was asked to talk about just a couple of the bills that I've introduced as the co-chair of the caucus, and they have to do with the research side of things. There are other bills that deal with veterans, and hey, we got the amendment accepted out of the Rules Committee, so hopefully you'll have a vote on that. So you can take that home as a victory and be pleased to see that pass. We've got bills on taxation, bills on allowing rescheduling in different ways, but there's more to it than that, because if you don't do studying, you won't have the facts that then back up your arguments of why this is a good thing. And right now, it's very difficult to do any very meaningful, worthwhile study because they control all the resources. The two bills that I wanted to mention, the Higher Education Marijuana Research Act, and that would eliminate obstacles to academic research and protect universities and researchers who want to study it and promote it. Because right now, universities are a little afraid to take on these programs for fear that there will be ramifications or implications or losing federal grants or some kind of harassment or lawsuits. But if we pass this, then the people who want to do the real research will be able to and will be protected. The other one is the Evidence-Based Drug Policy Act. Now, this would remove outdated restrictions on the Office of the National Drug Control Policy. Now, currently, that office and its director aren't even allowed to sponsor any research. They aren't allowed to talk about it. They have to actively oppose the legalization of anything that's Schedule I and not been approved by the FDA. That just should be lifted. I mean, that's so out of date. Look how many states allow the use of marijuana, whether it's medically or recreationally. I mean, let's catch up. Just get rid of that. It doesn't make any sense. So if we do those two things, that will help us do the research, get the information, be able to present the facts about what marijuana can do, what it might cause in the long run, why it's so much better than other things like maybe alcohol. So let's do the research, get the facts that these folks need so they can educate our members, they can advocate for this, and we can puff past that bill.
Thank you, Congressman, for helping move forward all of the goals of this coalition. There's perhaps no single greater attack on individual liberty than the war on drugs. Michelle Minton from the Reason Foundation brings a liberty-focused perspective on ending prohibition and expanding freedom. Michelle?
Good morning, everybody. Tough act to follow. So first, I want to thank SSDP, CAT, and all of the other organizations who are part of the Cannabis Unity Coalition. And I want to really begin by saying that the people with personal incarceration stories are why we're here. Their lived experience is the evidence that matters most. But what my organization, the Reason Foundation, which publishes Reason magazine, which has been advocating for the end of prohibition since its first issue in 1969, what we add to the coalition is decades of data and policy analysis that functionally teaches us the same thing that incarceration stories should have already taught us, which is that you can arrest your way to a more healthy society. So I want to begin also by talking about how rescheduling is not an end to prohibition. It does recognize what 40 states have already recognized, that there are medical uses, and plus all of the other millions of users who've recognized the medical uses. It also acknowledges the robustness of state approaches to regulating cannabis because it relies on medical licensing by the state. It provides tax relief and research and unburdens research to some degree. But it does not end prohibition. To echo Deshita, it just gives it different mechanisms. State licensed recreational dispensaries remain criminal enterprises under federal law. Consumers of both medical and recreational cannabis remain vulnerable to prosecution, and the conflict between 24 adult use states remains. As Deshita also pointed out, substances that are sold legally in medical facilities, the exact same product sold down the street by a recreational facility would violate federal law. So we're here today to ask Congress to finally act to end a 50-year mistake, longer in some cases, and to finally fully deschedule cannabis, release all prisoners, and clear all records. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to this week.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle, and Reason for always standing for liberty. Ron Millward is a United States Air Force combat veteran and one of the founders of the Balanced Veterans Network, advocating for veterans' access to innovative therapies, autonomy, and compassionate policy reform. Ron?
Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Again, my name's Ron Millward. I'm one of the founders of Balanced Veterans Network. And for over nearly a decade, we have been supporting veterans. We have seen thousands of veterans rebuild healthy, balanced, and meaningful lives after service. In our community, we have successful business leaders. We have parents, athletes, creators, and hardworking Americans who are proving every day that life after service can still be full of purpose and growth. Veterans are not broken people, they are leaders in our community. Most Americans say they want to support veterans, and this is a major way. The time for change is now. Veterans and Americans should not be treated like criminals for choosing a plant over pills or alcohol. No one should be in prison for cannabis, and it's time for policies that focus on healing, education, opportunity, and freedom instead of punishment. We served our country, and we should have the freedom to heal without the repercussions of being penalized. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron, and to our veteran friends who have been fighting for cannabis freedom for all of us. Mary Jane Oatman is an enrolled member of the Nez Perce tribe, a descendant of the Delaware tribe, and executive director of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association. Mary Jane, thank you for being here. Yeah.
Himakas Katsiaya Nunum Hanyawat, Piamsa Kinawatispa, Pamunki Kapaskatawe Watispa. First, I want to thank the Creator for gathering us here on the ancestral homelands of our relatives. We are not waiting for permission to heal our communities anymore. Our sovereignty has always carried the right to take care of our bodies, our lands, and our spirits. Plant medicines like cannabis are not new, and they have always been a part of that responsibility. This is the end of the permission era and the beginning of reclamation.
Yes, yes.
The reclamation of health, of dignity, and our inherent right as people and as Indigenous nations to continue our healing pathways forward. And I want to give a special call out to Idaho and the attack on democracy for Idahoans. Lean into House Joint Resolution 4, learn more, and just say no to HJR 4 in Idaho.
Thank you, Mary Jane. The mission of the Marijuana Policy Project, one of the leading organizations advancing cannabis legalization nationwide, is simple and direct. We change laws. Please welcome Adam Smith.
Yes.
Hello. Thank you to SSDP for organizing this and to all these great leaders for being here. I got involved in drug policy reform and interested in drug policy reform back in the early 90s when I ran a teen center in New York City. I heard politician after politician justify the drug war by telling me that we were protecting our kids. And I looked around at my 600 teens and I realized that was not true. In 1996, before California became the first state in the country to take a small chip out of the drug war by legalizing medical cannabis, we arrested 870,000 people in this country for cannabis offenses, almost 90% of those for possession. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, in 1996, nearly 75% of 10th and 12th graders said that cannabis was easy or fairly easy for them to obtain. Today, with more than half the country living under legal markets, those numbers, less than half of the can I start that again? Today, with more than half the country living under legal markets, those numbers have been cut in half. Teens access has gone down from almost 80% to under 40%. Wow. And teen use is at its lowest historical levels. Wow. It is time for a cannabis policy nationally that acknowledges that keeping our families safe, keeping our communities safe, means taking control of the illicit market, putting it behind counters, where it's age-gated, where IDs are checked every single time. If you care about protecting kids, you will legalize cannabis, you will take control, and we will end a century of prohibition. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam and MPP. Maggie Lavoie from the Parabola Center advocates for cannabis policies grounded in justice, equity, and community well-being. Thank you for being here today.
Hi everyone. Hi Kat. Thank you. Oh, okay. I'm gonna be louder now. Okay. Well, the first thing I wanted to say here is the reason that I'm here is because I'm from Maine, and small craft Maine medical cannabis growers have saved my life. So that's a big reason why I'm here today. And I want to make clear that descheduling is a priority for the Parabola Center of Law and Policy. However, while descheduling is lauded as a favored opinion amongst actually informed drug policy advocates, and for good reason, it has to be done with thoughtful and measured parameters. And these parameters must center equity amongst all market participants, not just those with extensive upfront capital like corporations. Right. And some people, we will politely say, oh, well, it gives them a first to market advantage. But what that really means is we're giving them a full carte blanche to take over our cannabis industry that we have fought so hard for, that we have served time for, that I have been in handcuffs for, that people in my community that have destroyed troves of intellectual and emotional and familial and all kinds of potential in my community. We were the ones fighting for it. Where were corporations? I'll wait. Anyway, what I want to say is, absent sensible regulatory parameters, descheduling will rapidly devolve into a corporate scramble for profit, a race to the bottom. I can nearly guarantee you that it will be a race to the bottom, and without parameters, it will facilitate market consolidation that will irreparably harm the industry that we have fought so hard to protect from big tobacco and big alcohol's vice grips. The market that all of us have been standing here and been fighting for. So while we want descheduling, we want it where small craft operators and people of color and people who have been harmed the worst by the war on drugs are given a meaningful seat at the table, instead of being given yet another corporatized market where we're simply an item on their menu. Yes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Maggie. There's nothing wrong with making profits, but not at the expense of people locked in cages. All right. I'd like to welcome now Mame Gyamfi from the Minority Cannabis Business Association, which helps economically empower the communities most impacted by cannabis prohibition. Mame.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, we stand united in raising our voices to call not only for meaningful cannabis reform, but also for justice. For far too long, communities of color have carried the weight of the failed cannabis policies that criminalized opportunity, devastated families, and denied generations the chance to build wealth and stability. Now, as the cannabis industry grows into a multi-billion-dollar economic force, we must make sure that the very people who are harmed the most are not shut out of all the opportunities, including the business opportunities, such as owning a business, obtaining a steady employment, and really getting the key to their family's financial future. True cannabis reform must include fully decriminalizing cannabis, expunging past convictions, restoring rights, and creating equitable pathways to participating in the legal market. Now is the time to correct historic wrongs. We call on lawmakers to pass meaningful cannabis reform and obtain justice for all. ALL exclamation point, period.
Justice for all. Susie Placencia is a nationally recognized cannabis entrepreneur, advocate, and community leader who joins us today as co-executive director of the National Hispanic Cannabis Council. Susie.
Good morning, everybody. Anytime I'm surrounded by so many fierce advocates, I'm reminded that change is possible. Si se puede. Can I get a si se puede on three? 1, 2, 3. Si se puede. I'm here proudly on behalf of the National Hispanic Cannabis Council, a national nonprofit advancing Latino participation in the legal cannabis industry through education, economic empowerment, and policy advocacy. And Latinas in Cannabis, the largest digital and in-person community dedicated to uplifting and connecting Latina professionals across this space. I proudly stand alongside the Cannabis Unity Coalition to demand an end to the failed system that continues to criminalize communities while others profit. Cannabis Unity Week is not a celebration of victory, yet. It's a call to action. Thousands of people are still incarcerated for cannabis offenses. Families are still living with the consequences of prohibition, and Latino communities remain disproportionately harmed and underrepresented in this industry. And yet, our community continues to show up with resilience. Latino entrepreneurs are among the fastest growing in our country, building businesses despite systemic barriers. But in cannabis, many still face limited access to capital, restrictive policies, and exclusion from ownership. We are building in spite of it all, and we should not have to build this alone. We are here to demand federal action, descheduling cannabis, expungement, clemency, and real pathways for the communities most impacted to participate and lead. Because equity is not just about repairing harm, it's about investing in our future, ¿sí o no? Y ahora para mi gente en español, estoy aquí representando National Hispanic Cannabis Council, una organización nacional sin fines de lucro dedicada a avanzar la participación de la comunidad latina hispana también en la industria legal de cannabis a través de la educación, el empoderamiento económico y la incidencia política. Y de Latinas en Cannabis, una comunidad enfocada en elevar y conectar profesionales latinas en este espacio. Hoy me uno con Cannabis Unity Week para exigir en un sistema fallido que continúa criminalizando a nuestras comunidades mientras los otros benefician. La Semana Unidad de Cannabis no es una celebración de victoria, es una llamada de acción. Miles de personas siguen encarceladas por delitos relacionados de cannabis. Familias continúan cargando las consecuencias de la prohibición. Las comunidades latinas hispanas siguen siendo desproporcionadamente afectadas, subrepresentadas en esta industria. Y aún si nuestra comunidad sigue demostrando resiliencia. Los emprendedores latinos son los que más rápido crecen en este país, construyendo negocios a pesar de las barreras sistémicas. Pero en cannabis, mucho aún enfrentan acceso limitado de capital, políticas restrictivas y exclusión de la propiedad. Estamos construyendo a pesar de todo, pero nos deberíamos hacerlos juntos. Estamos aquí para exigir acción federal, la declasificación del cannabis, la eliminación de accidentes penales y la adulta liberación de quienes están encarcelados y verdaderos caminos para las comunidades que pueden impactados por esas leyes. Porque en esto no podemos estar solas. Reparar este daño se trata de invertir en el futuro. Gracias.
Gracias, Susie. Sí se puede. The Rights and Reason Project is a dedicated legal and advocacy initiative supporting individuals' fundamental rights to cognitive liberty, bodily autonomy, religious use of entheogens, and freedom of thought. Please welcome founder Robert Rush.
Thanks. It's a true honor to be here. It was in November 2024, standing alongside of SSDP, we got to challenge the DEA on their attempt to schedule two very important research chemicals that also happen to be psychedelics. We conducted a 7-day hearing in DEA headquarters and got to see what the culture of the DEA is really like. And there are challenges with the DEA from my perspective, being in charge of what the future of cannabis will look like. Schedule 3, where we have the DEA deciding who gets to participate, who does not, is going to be problematic. And also a hearing coming up on June 29th, where they are going to decide what the fate of adult use looks like. I would have great trepidation if I was anybody here. Part of the problem is with the DEA and the Controlled Substances Act in general is that we have a system here where the enforcement agency, the DEA, in their name, also decides what is legal or illegal. And they decide that cannabis is illegal or legal. We need to take that power away to them. They are not elected. There's no oversight with them really, and they act the way they want to. We need to take the power away from them and return it to where it properly belongs, which is with the legislative branch. And we need the legislative branch to actually take some action and fix this, because that's how this needs to be fixed. Not by putting in Schedule 3, but by descheduling it completely and freeing a plant. There's no reason why people should be in jail for a plant until the last person is freed. We all must stand and fight and never stop. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. None of us is free until all of us is free. What a great way to wrap this up. So thank you to all of our speakers, our coalition partners, all 44 of them, and everyone joining us here today. What you heard this morning reflects the strength of a movement that is broader, more united, and more determined than ever before. 44 organizations from the political left, right, and the cannabis industry. 13 legislative pathways, 3 goals. 1 shared demand for justice, freedom, and common sense. This coalition represents people from every background and every corner of the cannabis reform movement. And despite our different perspectives, we are united by one undeniable reality. The American people are ready for change. The states are ready for change. The evidence is overwhelming. What remains is for Congress to act. Right. And that is exactly what we are here to demand today. In just a few minutes, members of the Cannabis Unity Coalition will fan out over Capitol Hill to deliver educational folders outlining all 13 legislative pathways for cannabis reform to every single congressional office in both the House and the Senate. Not some offices, not friendly offices, all the offices. Because every member of Congress has a responsibility to understand the human cost of prohibition and the opportunity that we have right now, today, to build a more just, evidence-based, and compassionate future. This movement is no longer isolated. It is national, it is organized, it is united, and we are not going away. Yes, we cannabis. Yes, we cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.